What if I told you that the biggest lie you've been told about self-love is that you need to accept who you are exactly as you are right now, when in truth Carl Jung discovered that genuine self-love requires you to have the courage to become who you were truly meant to be. If this resonates with you, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a like. Your support helps us create more content that can genuinely transform how you understand yourself and your potential. Most of what passes for self-love today is actually what Jung would call psychological stagnation, disguised as acceptance. You're told to embrace your flaws, celebrate your limitations, and find peace with mediocrity. But Jung discovered that this kind of superficial self-acceptance often becomes a comfortable prison that prevents you from accessing your deepest potential and authentic power. Jung realized that true self-love isn't about accepting yourself as you are. It's about loving yourself enough to become everything you're capable of becoming. It's about recognizing that the current version of yourself is just one stage in an ongoing process of psychological and spiritual development that continues throughout your entire life. If you've ever felt frustrated with conventional self-help advice that tells you to just think positive thoughts or practice gratitude while ignoring the deeper work of actual transformation, then you need to understand what Jung discovered about the relationship between genuine self-love and the courage to change. Jung called this process individuation, and he understood it to be the most important psychological work any human being can undertake. It's the journey of becoming consciously who you authentically are, rather than who others expect you to be, who society rewards you for being, or who you think you should be based on external conditioning. But here's what most people don't understand about individuation. It's not a comfortable process of self-acceptance. It's a challenging journey of self-creation that requires you to confront everything in yourself that isn't authentic, everything that's been borrowed from others, everything that keeps you small and safe and socially acceptable. Jung discovered that most people live what he called provisional lives, always preparing to really live, but never actually doing it. They postpone their authentic self-expression until they feel more confident, more prepared, more worthy. They wait for external permission to become who they really are. They practice a kind of self-love that keeps them comfortable but not transformed. True self-love, according to Jung, begins with what he called the acceptance of personal responsibility for your own psychological development. This means recognizing that you are not a fixed entity with predetermined limitations, but a dynamic process with unlimited potential for growth, creativity, and authentic expression. This kind of self-love doesn't say, "I'm perfect as I am." It says, "I love myself enough to become everything I'm capable of becoming." It doesn't avoid difficult emotions or challenging growth opportunities. It embraces them as essential parts of the transformation process. Jung understood that this journey requires what he called the integration of the shadow, the conscious recognition and acceptance of the parts of yourself that you've been taught to reject, suppress, or deny. Most people practice a kind of self-love that's actually self-rejection in disguise, loving only the socially acceptable parts of themselves while pushing everything else into unconsciousness. But Jung discovered that you cannot truly love yourself while rejecting significant aspects of your personality, your desires, your anger, your darkness, your unconventional thoughts and feelings. Real self-love requires what he called wholeness, the integration of all aspects of your personality into a unified and authentic sense of self. This means having the courage to acknowledge your anger without being controlled by it, to recognize your selfishness without being consumed by guilt, to accept your sexual desires without shame, to own your ambitions without apology. It means loving yourself enough to be honest about who you actually are, rather than who you think you should be. Jung found that most people are afraid of this kind of honest self-examination because they've been conditioned to believe that certain aspects of human nature are inherently bad or wrong. But he discovered that these rejected aspects often contain tremendous creative energy and authentic power that becomes available when they're consciously integrated rather than unconsciously suppressed. The self-love that transforms your life isn't the gentle self-acceptance that leaves everything unchanged. It's the fierce commitment to your own psychological and spiritual development that's willing to face whatever needs to be faced, heal whatever needs to be healed, and change whatever needs to be changed. Jung realized that this process often requires what he called necessary suffering, the willingness to experience the discomfort of growth rather than the comfort of stagnation. It means loving yourself enough to leave situations, relationships, and identities that no longer serve your highest development, even when that leaving is difficult or scary. True self-love sometimes means disappointing people who expect you to remain small and predictable. It means setting boundaries that protect your energy and authentic expression. It means saying no to opportunities that look good externally, but don't align with your genuine values and direction. It means choosing your own approval over external validation. Jung discovered that most people are terrified of this kind of authentic self-love because it requires them to take full responsibility for their lives, rather than remaining victims of circumstances, other people's expectations, or their own unconscious patterns. It's much easier to practice superficial self-acceptance than to do the real work of self-creation. But Jung also found that this deeper self-love leads to what he called psychological freedom, the capacity to live from your authentic center rather than being controlled by external pressures, unconscious patterns, or other people's opinions. When you love yourself enough to become genuine, you develop an inner authority that can't be shaken by external criticism or temporary setbacks. This kind of self-love creates what Jung called presence, a quality of being that naturally attracts opportunities, relationships, and experiences that support your continued growth and authentic expression. When you're genuinely committed to your own development, the universe seems to conspire to support that commitment. But Jung was very clear that this transformation doesn't happen through positive thinking or affirmations alone. It happens through what he called active imagination, the conscious engagement with your unconscious material through practices like dream work, creative expression, meditation, and honest self-reflection. Jung developed specific techniques for what he called befriending the unconscious, learning to work collaboratively with the deeper aspects of your psyche rather than being controlled by them unconsciously. This requires developing what he called ego strength, the capacity to remain centered and conscious even when dealing with powerful emotions, difficult truths, or challenging growth opportunities. The first practice Jung recommended is what he called daily psychological inventory, the regular examination of your thoughts, feelings, reactions, and patterns to identify what's authentic and what's borrowed, what serves your growth and what keeps you stuck, what aligns with your genuine values, and what's based on external conditioning. This isn't about judging yourself harshly or trying to fix everything immediately. It's about developing the kind of honest self-awareness that allows you to make conscious choices about who you're becoming, rather than unconsciously repeating patterns that don't serve you. Jung found that this daily practice of self-examination naturally leads to what he called course corrections, small but significant changes in how you think, feel, and behave that gradually align your life more closely with your authentic nature and highest potential. The second practice Jung developed is what he called creative expression of authentic self, the regular engagement with activities that allow your genuine nature to emerge and be expressed. This might be writing, art, music, movement, or any form of creativity that connects you with your inner truth and allows it to be manifested in the world. Jung realized that creativity isn't just a hobby or talent. It's an essential tool for psychological development, a way of giving form to the insights, feelings, and visions that emerge from your individuation process. When you express yourself creatively on a regular basis, You strengthen your connection to your authentic nature and develop greater capacity for genuine self-love. But Jung emphasized that this creative expression needs to be authentic rather than performative. It's not about creating things that others will approve of or that fit conventional standards of quality. It's about using creativity as a tool for self-discovery and authentic expression, regardless of whether the results are impressive to others. The third practice Jung recommended is what he called relationship with your inner guidance, the development of a conscious connection with what he called the self, the wise and integrated aspect of your personality that knows your authentic path and highest potential. This isn't about following external authorities or gurus. It's about developing the capacity to recognize and trust your own inner wisdom, the subtle but reliable guidance that emerges when you're genuinely committed to your psychological and spiritual development. Jung found that as people develop this relationship with their inner guidance, they naturally begin making choices that support their authentic development rather than choices based on fear, social pressure, or unconscious patterns. They develop what he called discriminating consciousness, the ability to distinguish between what truly serves their growth and what merely appears attractive or socially acceptable. Now I want to share with you the most profound discovery Jung made about true self-love, something that will fundamentally transform how you understand not just personal development, but the very purpose of your existence and your role in the evolution of human consciousness. Jung realized that the self-love that truly transforms your life isn't ultimately about you as an individual at all. It's about your willingness to become a conscious participant in what he called the collective individuation process, the evolution of human consciousness that happens through individuals who are brave enough to become genuinely themselves. When you love yourself enough to undertake the real work of psychological and spiritual development, you're not just improving your personal life, you're contributing to the healing and evolution of the entire human collective. Your individual transformation becomes a gift to the world, a living example of what's possible when human beings commit to becoming authentic rather than remaining unconscious. Jung discovered that this perspective completely transforms the motivation for personal development work. Instead of being driven by self-improvement or the desire to feel better about yourself, you become motivated by what he called sacred responsibility, the recognition that your psychological development serves something much larger than your individual happiness or success. This sacred responsibility doesn't diminish the importance of your personal happiness. It elevates it by connecting your individual development to a larger purpose that gives meaning and direction to the sometimes difficult work of authentic growth and transformation. Jung found that when people embrace this larger perspective, they develop what he called sustainable motivation for the individuation process. Instead of getting discouraged when the work becomes challenging or when results don't come quickly enough, they're sustained by the recognition that their commitment to authenticity serves the evolution of consciousness itself. But Jung also discovered that this larger perspective requires what he called the transcendence of ego-based self-love, the willingness to love something beyond your personal comfort, security, and social approval. True self-love ultimately becomes love for the authentic self that you're meant to become, rather than attachment to the ego identity you currently inhabit. This transcendence doesn't mean rejecting or suppressing the ego. It means developing what Jung called conscious relationship with ego, recognizing it as a useful tool for navigating practical reality rather than mistaking it for your complete identity. When you love yourself from this larger perspective, you're free to change, grow, and evolve without feeling like you're losing yourself. Jung realized that this freedom to evolve is essential for genuine transformation. Most people resist change because they're identified with their current personality, their established patterns, their familiar ways of thinking and feeling. They practice a kind of self-love that's actually attachment to limitation, fear of becoming different from who they currently are. But Jung discovered that authentic self-love includes what he called loving your potential, embracing the unknown aspects of yourself that are waiting to emerge through conscious development. This requires developing what he called courage for uncertainty, the willingness to grow into possibilities that you can't fully imagine from your current level of consciousness. This courage for uncertainty becomes the foundation for what Jung called creative self-love, the kind of love that encourages experimentation, exploration, and authentic expression rather than safety, predictability, and social approval. When you love yourself creatively, you become willing to try new approaches, explore new territories, and express aspects of yourself that might not fit conventional expectations. Jung found that this creative self-love naturally leads to what he called synchronistic support, the mysterious way that life seems to provide opportunities, resources, and connections that support your authentic development when you're genuinely committed to it. When you love yourself enough to follow your authentic path, the universe appears to conspire to help you succeed. But Jung was very clear that this synchronistic support doesn't mean the path becomes easy or that you avoid all challenges and difficulties. It means that the challenges you encounter become meaningful rather than random, that the difficulties you face contribute to your development rather than simply creating suffering. Jung discovered that when you approach challenges from the perspective of authentic self-love, they become what he called individuation opportunities, chances to develop new capacities, integrate shadow material, or clarify your authentic values and direction. Even difficult experiences become valuable when they serve your psychological and spiritual development. This transforms your entire relationship with adversity, failure, and setback. Instead of seeing these as evidence that you're not good enough or that life is unfair, you begin to recognize them as necessary aspects of the transformation process, opportunities to develop the strength, wisdom, and authenticity that you need for your continued growth. Jung found that this perspective naturally develops what he called resilient self-love, the kind of love that remains constant through both success and failure, both praise and criticism, both comfortable and challenging circumstances. This resilient self-love becomes an unshakable foundation for authentic living that can't be disturbed by external circumstances. But Jung also discovered that this resilient self-love requires what he called the integration of the inferior function, the conscious development of psychological capacities that don't come naturally to you, but that are essential for psychological wholeness and authentic expression. For thinking types, this might mean developing greater emotional intelligence and relational sensitivity. For feeling types, it might mean cultivating logical analysis and objective thinking. For sensing types, it might mean exploring intuitive and imaginative capacities. For intuitive types, it might mean developing practical skills and attention to concrete details. Jung realized that most people avoid developing their inferior function because it's uncomfortable and makes them feel incompetent. But he discovered that this avoidance keeps them psychologically lopsided and prevents them from accessing their full potential for authentic expression and creative contribution. True self-love includes what Jung called loving your incompetence, the willingness to be temporarily awkward or unskillful in order to develop new capacities that serve your psychological wholeness. This requires letting go of the need to appear competent and capable all the time, embracing the beginner's mind that's essential for genuine learning and growth. Jung found that as people develop their inferior function, they often discover tremendous creative potential that was previously inaccessible. The psychological capacities that feel most foreign and challenging often contain the keys to breakthrough insights, innovative solutions, and authentic self-expression that distinguishes you from others. This leads to what Jung called integrated self-love, Love for your complete psychological potential, rather than just your developed strengths and comfortable capacities. When you love yourself in this integrated way, you become genuinely whole, rather than just successful in your areas of natural talent. But Jung discovered that this integrated self-love ultimately leads to what he called transcendent service, the natural desire to use your developed capacities and authentic gifts in service of something larger than your individual life. When you become genuinely whole and authentic, you naturally want to contribute to the healing and evolution of the world around you. This isn't about sacrificing your personal happiness for others. It's about discovering that your deepest fulfillment comes from using your authentic gifts in ways that serve the collective good. Jung found that this transcendent service becomes the ultimate expression of self-love, the recognition that your individual development and the well-being of the whole are intimately connected. Jung realized that this connection between individual authenticity and collective service resolves what he called the selfishness paradox. The more genuinely you love and develop yourself, the more naturally you want to serve others. The more authentically you become yourself, the more you naturally contribute to the collective evolution of consciousness. This means that any guilt or conflict you might feel between personal development and service to others is based on a false understanding of how psychological development actually works. True self-love automatically becomes love for the whole, because authentic individuality naturally serves collective evolution. But Jung emphasized that this service needs to emerge organically from your authentic development, rather than being imposed as an external obligation. When you try to serve others before you've done your own psychological work, you often end up projecting your unconscious patterns onto your service, trying to help others in ways that actually serve your own unconscious needs, rather than their genuine welfare. Jung found that authentic service emerges naturally when you've developed sufficient self-awareness, emotional integration, and spiritual maturity to offer genuine help rather than unconscious projection. This authentic service becomes a natural expression of your psychological wholeness rather than a way of avoiding your own development work. The ultimate goal of Jung's approach to self-love isn't personal happiness, though happiness often results. It's what he called conscious participation in the evolution of consciousness, the recognition that your individual development contributes to the collective transformation of human awareness and capability. When you understand self-love from this perspective, every aspect of your personal development work becomes meaningful beyond your individual life. Your willingness to face your shadow contributes to the collective healing of human darkness. Your commitment to authenticity contributes to the collective evolution beyond social conditioning and unconscious conformity. Your creative expression contributes to the collective expansion of human possibility. Your psychological integration contributes to the collective development of human wholeness. Your spiritual development contributes to the collective awakening of human consciousness. If you've recognized yourself in this exploration of authentic self-love and want to deepen your understanding of how to love yourself in ways that truly transform your life, I want you to subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications for more insights that can support your individuation journey. Share this video with others who might be struggling with superficial approaches to self-love that leave them unchanged and unfulfilled. Sometimes the most powerful transformation happens when we understand that genuine self-love requires courage and commitment rather than just acceptance and comfort. And leave a comment sharing your own experience with the journey from superficial self-acceptance to authentic self-love. What aspects of yourself have you been avoiding or rejecting? What would it mean to love yourself enough to become everything you're capable of becoming? Because Jung's ultimate message about self-love is this: you cannot truly love yourself while remaining unconscious, inauthentic, or psychologically fragmented. Real self-love requires the courage to become genuinely yourself, to integrate all aspects of your personality, and to use your developed gifts in service of something larger than your individual life. Stop practicing the kind of self-love that keeps you comfortable but unchanged. Start embracing the kind of self-love that calls you toward your highest potential and authentic contribution to the world. The person you're meant to become is waiting for you to love yourself enough to begin the journey of conscious transformation.